the Israeli governmental officials that I've spoken to, they're incredibly excited that President Trump is in. And what's really important to know is that our enemies have no idea what in the hell President Trump is going to do. A direct threat to Vladimir Putin is what kept him out of Ukraine when President Trump was in office. He said that he would bomb the Kremlin. And Putin did not invade Ukraine. He waited for Biden to get in there. So what Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, the Houthi rebels, the mullahs that are oppressing the Iranian people need to understand is that Donald Trump means business. And it's America's business, and it's our allies' business. So they're either going to conform or they will pay a heavy price. That could be anything from economic sanctions to those B-82s dropping down their chimney. It's time to get back to a place where American citizens and our allies are not being hunted and killed by savages.
All right, guys, good Tuesday to you. First work day for a lot of people after a federal holiday. We were here. Great conversation with Chicks on the Right yesterday. I loved it. And they're always so much fun. I love breaking down the topics with them because they bring such an interesting and fun perspective to this. Anyway, I've got some really interesting insights that I'm going to share with you. And I know I say this all the time, but like two things today that I don't think you're going to see anywhere else. One, I'm going to break down a little inside baseball thing that's going on with the Associated Press and the White House that the media is melting down on. And I'm going to explain to you what really is happening because most people don't get it. They've never been at the levels that I have and have the experience I do working with the media. So you're going to hear a lot of people whine and complain about what the White House is doing. And I'm going to actually share with you the reality, what's really going on. I want to start before I get this. By the way, Derrick Van Orden, congressman from Wisconsin and former Navy SEAL, is in Israel. And we're going to talk to him in just a bit about what he's seeing on the ground there, how Europe as a whole is reacting to J.D. Vance position, the stance towards Europe and making them actually put their big boy pants on and pay their fair share and act like what a friend's supposed to be, as well as these talks in Ukraine and how we're approaching trying to end this war and the bloodshed. And I know that the media loves to focus on the process. Oh, who's at the table? Who's not at the table? This isn't fair. Do you really care? I want the war to end. I want people to stop dying. I want us to have to stop sending money. That's what I care about. All the left little snowflakes care about who gets to sit at the big boy table and have this discussion. I want it to end. Putin fears Trump and his team. He doesn't fear Zelensky. And I don't think he not only fears, I don't think he respects any of the leaders in Europe. Just let's be honest. So let's get people at the table that can actually put an end to this. And that's what Donald Trump has done. Before I get to this AP thing, I feel like every day we should have like a segment about DOGE, what they're uncovering. And the latest example that DOGE has found is Social Security. People who are like 200 years old still getting checks, people who are not American citizens getting checks. And it is just amazing to me how the left is approaching this. John Fetterman, who tweeted out, he said, I want to save you billions of your money and make our government more efficient. Rummaging through your personal expletive, you can fill in the blank there, is not that. A party of chaos always loses. Okay. So let me just break this down for you. John Fetterman has done nothing on this front. So his little I want to do this. No. You haven't done anything. You were given the chance. You've been in office and you've done nothing. Zero. And he's one of the newbies. For decades, no one's done anything. And now suddenly that Elon is exposing all of this, they're like, I would have done that if someone had. If you didn't. The bottom line is for decades on end, both parties have done nothing. They've pissed away your money, allowed it to be wasted. And now suddenly that someone's actually looking for it, uncovering it, exposing it, they're like, no. This can't happen. So, you think about it. Elon tweeted out this chart of the number of people, and it shows. I mean, first of all, think about this. He says this at the beginning of his tweet. If I want to rummage through personal SH, right? I could have done that at PayPal. Remember that? I mean, people were giving him all of their financial information or whatever. Like, this guy's had access to a ton of people's information for a long time. So let's just face facts. Number two is all of these people are alive who are getting Social Security. I mean, think about this. There are people that are 180 years old, 695 of them. I'm just picking one example on this list who are getting Social Security. Do you really think that at 180, I think the world's oldest person has ever been like 105, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but something like that. So let's just take it to an example. There's a person who is 360 years old that's still getting Social Security. Wow. I'd love to be that person. What Elon is doing is exposing all of this. And for a variety of reasons, people on both sides of the aisle have done nothing. So let's cut the BS. The second thing is this access idea. They're all asking like they have access to all the sensitive information. Okay, that's what people in government do. As long as you're authorized, you have a security clearance or permission, that's what people do. Do you know how many people have access to the Treasury Department right now, all of those files, or the Social Security? You just don't know any of them. There are thousands of people. There are thousands, and in fact, probably hundreds of thousands of people that have security clearances, that have secrets at the tip of their fingers, that work on classified systems. We don't know many of them, probably almost all of them. That's how the system works. So the Democrats, when they say this crap, they don't want to tell you the reality of that's just how it works. I mean, think about how many people work at the Department of Defense that have access to classified security information. No one's complaining, are they, from the left in the media? Think about all the people who are actually seeing Treasury information every day that haven't done anything to expose the waste, fraud, abuse, duplicity, mismanagement. Where was the concern about those people? They actually have had access for a long time. That's the biggest concern that you have on the left. Who has access? These DOGE folks. You should be thanking Elon for having access to this, just to be clear. This is what we're facing. Their biggest complaint is who has access. Shouldn't you be concerned that there's a person that's 360 years old that's getting Social Security and the program's going insolvent? Right? Think about this. The program's going bankrupt in a few years. And there are people who are 300 years old getting benefits. There are foreigners getting benefits. That's what we should be concerned on. The Democrats are so off base on this. It's unbelievable. All right. That's my rant. But now I want to tell you about something that you will hear nowhere else, because very few people understand it, just to be honest with you. And that's why I want to share this with you. So you may have heard this story in the last few days about President Trump barring the AP, the Associated Press. That's not really what's happening. And so I want to explain to you what is happening and why. So the White House press office has banned the Associated Press from being part of what they call the pool. What's the pool? Well, think about it. There's like 5,000 members of the White House Press Association. Not all of them can actually go, even to any event, right? There's 13 seats, 12 seats, I think, on Air Force One. There are a number of them that can only get into the Oval Office. So they create what they call a pool. The pool is a couple wire reporters, a photographer, a cameraman, a radio person, a photographer, print reporter. These are the pool. They represent the greater body. They take images, they record stuff, they write things down, and they send it back to everyone else and say, hey, since you couldn't be in the room, here's what was said and done. Okay? That's how that works. So the White House press office said, okay, the AP, of course, they can sit in the briefing room. They can cover the White House. They've got their credentials, but we're not letting you be part of the pool. We're not letting on Air Force One, and we're not letting in thing because you guys refuse to accept that President Trump has now called the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. Apple Maps, Google Maps, they've changed their name. So you think, okay, well, this is kind of petty maybe, right? Just because they won't use one word. But this is where the story gets interesting. And I want to explain this to you and show you this. This is the AP stylebook. Okay, this is the 2005 edition, the last one that I have. Why this matters is this is the bigger issue here. Words matter. And the AP is the 800-pound gorilla. What the AP says goes. Newsrooms around the country, journalists, outlets, radio outlets, use the AP's guidance to dictate how they report things to you. So what the AP says matters. The President of the United States changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. As I said, Apple Maps, Google Maps, they changed it. Federal agencies are changing it. But the AP says, no, we're not going to change it. But the White House office says this is the problem. You guys dictate things for everybody. And the AP says, well, we're not political. We don't get to cave on this. But that's just not true. Axios has a reporter named Mark Caputo, and he explained this actually really well. But he said the AP's unwillingness to use the reporting of the Gulf of Mexico isn't really what's at it. It's actually more of a protest, as what White House aides say is years of liberal word choices in this influential style book that matters. And that's the point. Every year, the AP style book updates their verbiage, their words they use, just like the dictionary gets updated, right? But it's much more pervasive. It's much worse because what they said goes. So you might be reading a newspaper in Providence, Rhode Island or Sacramento, California, and the copy of that story is probably from the AP. So the words they use matter. It shapes political dialogue, and it always favors the left, the liberal words and phrases. And I'm talking about things like gender, immigration, law, race. This weaponization of language is what's really at the core here. In 30 plus years, I can't think of a single instance, not one, where the AP style book favored the language of the right. Think about this. Why do you think they refer to everyone who's pro-life as anti-choice? Because they've decided that's how it's going to be framed. That's how this works. Think about how they frame people who support the Second Amendment. Evil, bad people, right? Gun tote, because the language matters. Let me give you a couple examples. The AP's transgender coverage says that they should use, quote, avoid false balance, giving a platform to unqualified claims in the guise of balancing a story. So in other words, don't say both sides exist. Some people support transgender, some people don't. If you don't support transgender, you're bad. You're evil. We should cancel you. We shouldn't acknowledge you. We shouldn't, as an organization, show that there are two sides to that story. Do you get what I'm saying here? They've decided not just the words to use, but how to frame the debate. They want to make sure we use the phrase gender-affirming care. So if you don't agree with that, you're not acknowledged in an AP story. Think about it. They want you to, and this is the one that my fourth grade English teacher would blow up at. When they talk about race, the AP capitalizes black, but not white. They said this: white people's skin color plays into systematic inequalities and injustices, and we want our journalism to robustly explore those problems. But capitalizing the term white, as done by white supremacists, risks subtly conveying legitimacy to such beliefs. So wait a second. Why is black? I mean, so I get maybe we shouldn't capitalize white, but somehow now we're just going to capitalize the word black when we refer to people's races because that's undoing some random injustice that they have decided exists. This is my favorite, by the way, just to show you what we're fighting. The style book, quote, frowns on the term illegal immigrant and says to use illegal only refer to an action, not a person. Illegal immigrant, no, yes, but not illegal immigrant. So let me get this straight. Do you understand? This is why they are so passionate about this. The legal term is illegal alien. That's what's in the law. But they don't like it. Why? Because it makes these people who have broken our law seem less, favorable, right? You're more compassionate if someone hasn't broken the law. The AP doesn't want you to think of them as criminals, people who broke a law, because you might be less compassionate to these folks that have broken a law, that are illegally in the country. As I said, they still have their credentials. They can still cover the White House. So this isn't about the freedom of the press. Caroline Leavitt said it right. They don't have a right to go into the Oval Office. That's a privilege. It's an invitation that one is extended and accepts. I don't have a right to go to their offices today and just walk into their meetings, do I? Freedom of the press means that you have a right to write what you want, and the government can't impede on that. It doesn't give you an open invitation to every office that you choose to go into. The left's not going to tell you that, but I will. I said this before, but the difference between this administration and the last one is that this time President Trump is ready to take the fight over and over again, and it's showing. And we need to have his back because they're trying to create this false equivalency that their rights are under attack. That is not true. All right. I want to bring in Congressman Derrick Van Orden, Wisconsin Congressman, former Navy SEAL. He's in Israel to give us an update as to what's going on. Before I get to that, though, you guys, I've told you this before. I have, I'm trying to deal a lot with my wellness issues, but my knees are old and battered. My hips are old and battered. I'm trying to schedule some surgery for that. I do a lot, but what I've realized is that my shoe matters. And I have tried gravity defyer shoes now for quite some time. And I was addicted the first time I put one on, and now use them for every aspect of whether it's just walking, whether it's going for a jog, it's not running, or working out. And I've got a pair that I play in pickleball with. I've become so addicted to these. I'm like giving them now as friends. These are not your average shoe. Gravity defyer shoes are actually FTC approved to relieve pain caused by walking and running. So if you've got sore legs or shoulders, they've got this Verso technology. The first time you step in one, you'll get what I'm talking about. It's like stepping on a trampoline. It's soft. It gives you tons of support. They help align your body, improve biomechanics, and return energy to you. It's an unbelievable. The shoe works probably as hard as you do. I tell you, once you try on gravity defyer shoes, you're not going back. They're completely stylish. If you check out the website, they've got all sorts of different shoes for different things. Here's the best part. Listeners to the show right now get 50% off orders of $120 or more. Just text Sean, spell out the right way, SEAN, Sean, to 91888. Just text the word Sean and you'll get half off the shoes. It will literally transform your life. And they've got a 60-day money back guarantee. So you've got nothing to lose. Text Sean to 91888 or visit GDEFY. That's Gravity Defyer, GDEFY.com, and take your step towards a better life. All right, guys, speaking of a better life and taking a step forward, I have added probiotics to my routine a few years ago. I had Tina Anderson on from Just Thrive. She joined us last week, and she was the one who actually schooled me and said, it's not like all probiotics are made equal. The difference between most probiotics and Just Thrive, which is what I've been taking recently, is the Just Thrive ones actually get through your stomach. Most don't. And that's the thing. These things are backed by unbelievable clinical research to prove that they actually do what they're supposed to, and most don't. And the cool thing about them is probiotics are all about gut health. And we've learned so much about gut health. It's tied to your skin, your mood, stomach issues. It's so much sleep is so much tied to gut health. It is the only probiotic, the one from Just Thrive, that is clinically proven to get to your gut 100% alive. And that's the key thing. That's what it's supposed to do. It means better digestion, better immunity, greater energy, easy weight management. It is backed by 100% money back guarantee. And it, like I said, I feel better once I switched over to the Just Thrive one. So go to justthrivehealth.com, justthrivehealth.com. Use code SPICER for 20% off your first 90-day bottle. I'm telling you, I'm a huge fan of the gummies. I've gone both ways. Tina says that the gummies are just as good for you, and I trust her on this because I trust her on all my health stuff. So go to justthrivehealth.com, promo code SPICER. All right, guys, I'm excited to welcome in Wisconsin Congressman, former Navy SEAL, all-around good guy, live from Israel, Congressman Derrick Van Orden. Congressman, always great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm currently in Israel at an international security symposium, and I spent a significant portion of the day with Speaker Ohana. That's the Speaker of the Knesset. Obviously, the big topics are hostages, American aid, and Iran.
Well, let's start with the top one then. Give us the lay of the land on where I know President Trump had said that last week was the deadline for all hostages to be out, but then gave Prime Minister Netanyahu sort of the green light to do what he has to do. Where do things stand?
Well, as we know, the last living American hostage has been released, and we're thankful for that. There still are several hostages that are being held by these Hamas savages, and they better understand that this is not going to go well for them. So I encourage anyone from Hamas watching your show, which I don't know how big that sample is, Sean, but
the data is a little light on that.
it is. It's kind of hard. They once they turned in all their beepers, it's hard to get a hold of them.
Oh,
So the Israeli government is poised to do anything they need to get their people back. And the United States government, that was my primary question, is to the speaker was, what can we do? What are we not doing to help facilitate getting your people home? And what are we not doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again with Hamas or Hezbollah?
and what was the answer?
You know what they said? Right now, with the amount of support that we're giving them in this particular realm, they're exceptionally pleased with it. We just got and they brought this up intentionally. So they just got a delivery of B-82s. Those are 2,000-pound bombs that the Biden DOD had been holding up because you have a bunch of anti-Semites in the Democrat Party in the Biden administration, and they are explicitly thankful for that. Something
So,
else the
go
speaker
ahead.
said, Sean, was that they're not asking us to fight their war. They're asking us to facilitate them being able to fight the war, which was great. And they're so incredibly appreciative. And what I explained to them, and they know this intuitively, the Israelis are actually fighting an American war because every one of these terrorists that they're killing, Sean, if they weren't focusing on killing Israelis, they'd be focusing on killing Americans and our other allies. So let's never forget that.
So put your Navy SEAL hat back on.
Yep.
If they came to you and said, "Hey, Congressman, look, you've done some pretty amazing stuff in the past as a Navy SEAL. You guys are trained for this stuff. What are our options? Like, what could and should we be doing to get these hostages out?" What would you tell them?
I would tell them to essentially do anything they need to. And I mean anything. Listen, before October 7th, there was a ceasefire in Israel. There was a de facto two-state solution, and Hamas decided to break that. And we went over some of the events of October 7th again, and it's just horrific, and horrific. I hope people understand that. So whatever they need to leverage, they need to leverage. And I would never discuss any ongoing, I know you're not asking me to, but I wouldn't discuss any planning, if there's any planning going on in particular to recover these hostages.
Are they sharing that with you? I mean, I get you don't want to talk about it publicly, but in private, are they discussing with you some of the options that they have on the table?
We've had some very, very frank conversations.
And do you feel like, do you look at the options that they're presenting you with the background that you have as a Navy SEAL and say, those make sense?
Everything I've heard from the Israeli government has made sense in reference to their hostages. They're very, very skilled operators, and their tier one forces here are tier one forces.
Yeah. The president a couple of weeks ago or I don't know, gosh, it's probably only a week ago. It's Trump time. I forget. When Prime Minister Netanyahu was in the United States, made this point about potentially rebuilding Gaza, the U.S. having an ownership stake in it. How's it going over there in Israel?
Here's how it's going. The Israeli governmental officials that I've spoken to, it's like they just had this huge breath of fresh air. Like they've been held underwater for 4 years by the Biden administration. And it's palatable. They're incredibly excited that President Trump is in. They're excited about Pete Hegseth. They're excited about Mike Waltz being in as National Security Advisor. So they understand something has changed. And what's really important to know is that our enemies have no idea what in the hell President Trump is going to do.
That's the thing. You just put your finger on it. Like they're so like what he's so unpredictable. That's what strikes fear in them.
And that's what, hey, listen, a direct threat to Vladimir Putin is what kept him out of Ukraine when President Trump was in office. He said that he would bomb the Kremlin, and Putin did not invade Ukraine. He waited for Biden to get in there. So what Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, the Houthi rebels, the mullahs that are oppressing the Iranian people need to understand is that Donald Trump means business, and it's America's business, and it's our allies' business. So they're either going to conform or they will pay a heavy price. That could be anything from economic sanctions to those B-82s dropping down they're dropping down their chimney. It's time to get back to a place where American citizens and our allies are not being hunted and killed by savages.
All right, I hate to interrupt this conversation with Derrick Van Orden, but of all people, he's a Navy SEAL. He should understand this. You have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit in your house. Now I'm going to implore you to get a LifeVac. It looks just like this. Here's the cool thing about a LifeVac. It can literally make anybody a hero in the event of a choking incident. Think about how many choking incidents you hear about all the time. You don't need to worry about the Heimlich maneuver or anything else. Anybody can be a hero with a LifeVac. You literally insert it over someone's mouth. It helps dislodge whatever's causing the choking incident. As I said to folks the last couple of weeks, somebody on this show purchased a LifeVac and saved a life. The company called me all excited. It made me feel good, to be honest with you, to know that someone on the show purchased a LifeVac and saved somebody's life during a choking incident because of this. So be like them. Get one in your house. Be like me. Have one here. If your kid's school don't have one, they will send one for free to the school. So go ahead, take advantage of that. They will always replace it, the mask, if you ever have to use it in an instance. But trust me, you just want to be on the safe side so that somebody can deal with a choking incident in the event that something happens. Get your own LifeVac now. Go to lifevac.net. It's LifeVac, VAC.net, lifevac.net. Do it right now because a life could literally depend on it. All right, back to the conversation with Congressman Van Orden. Do you think that Hamas is serious? Like, are they playing games with the rest of the hostages? Or is there a real path to retrieve them?
I think Hamas is understanding that they're running out of human shields. And they're going to get more and more desperate as this process plays out. I don't trust them at all.
Right.
I do not trust anybody who intentionally planned an attack to slaughter, rape, murder, dismember, and burn alive thousands of innocent civilians. So they fall into the untrustworthy category. But what they're starting to see is that as more and more hostages are released, that's going to open up more and more options for the Israeli army to take care of those people.
Meaning that as they control fewer of them, it's easier to attack them. Is that what you mean? Like, in other words, the less leverage, the less hostages they have, the more leverage Israel has?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So, and I agree with you on
unfortunate.
that. But doesn't that make it, I mean, they're not dummies either, I assume. And they know that the more hostages they give up, the more, the less leverage they have. So, I mean, does that play against Israel, right? If I know that, you know that, they got to know that. Do they say, if the more times that we hand over another hostage, the less you take us seriously?
It's not that the less they take them seriously. Listen, it is a blessing in the Jewish religion to free prisoners. It's part of their faith. Okay. So I have the utmost confidence that the Israeli government is going to fight equally and as hard for one hostage as they would for 100. But that just by volume, you can, if you only have 5 people, they can only be in 5 separate locations if they're being held separately, or they can only be in one location if they're held together, right? So the maximum amount of places you can put 5 hostages is 5 individual areas. That means that you essentially have 5 safe havens. So because you're not going to bomb a hostage on purpose, right? So as that number decreases, it's a math problem. The fewer amount of places a hostage can physically be located to, in essence, be a shield for these terrorists.
I want to turn to the comments that JD Vance made last week in Munich and the meltdown of the left and the Europeans. Some people called the speech belligerent on the left. Some people said that that's not how you treat allies. Chuck Todd put himself into the fetal position and probably went to the bathroom on himself. It just, they could not believe that we were speaking to our ally in Europe the way that JD did. How did you interpret the speech?
It was Church-hillian. That's going to go down as one of the most significant historical speeches of the 21st century. Because for the first time in a very, very long time, the world's superpower spoke directly to their allies and just told them the truth.
Yeah.
And they needed to hear it. The left is apoplectic. which generally speaking means you've done something good. Anytime you can force Chuck Todd to release his bowels, you've probably done something right. That's a maxim. So if you think about it, man, the values. So we had over 200,000 Americans, military people die in World War II to free Europe from Nazi Germany and free Asia from Imperial Japan. And what they were fighting for is to restore democracy. And democracy takes it takes the ability to exchange ideas freely. It's Benjamin Franklin's Silence Do-Goods letter number 8 articulates this perfectly, that without freedom of speech, you can't have public liberty, and without public liberty, you'll never have wisdom, essentially. And so because wisdom comes from truth over time, and it's got to be truth over time, not a lie over time. And so collectively, you can never move forward as a society unless you're able to freely exchange ideas without worrying about being persecuted. And that's what we fought for, to free Europe. And that's what the vice president was telling these world leaders, that they've gotten so far off the mark, they don't even realize how far off the mark they are. And for that reporter lady from NBC or ABC, where is she from, who said that?
CBS.
From CBS. I mean, they're all the same. Doesn't matter. To say that free speech led to the Holocaust. I brought that up. We talked about that today.
How did that go over in Israel? Did people hear Margaret Brennan? Like, did they ask you about that? Does that reverberate in Israel, or does that stop at the water's edge?
They were disgusted. Absolutely disgusted. So the Speaker of the Knesset today handed me a book and he said, "You should look at this. We're setting this office." And it's a book. It's about that thick, right? And it's a big book. And when you open the pages in tiny type, it just says Jew. And it says Jew 6 million times in that book. It doesn't say anything else. So there's one word for every Jew that was murdered in the Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
And it smacked me on the side of the face. I'm like, oh my goodness, because this is tangible. So every time these morons in the mainstream media start calling people Nazis and they're Hitler, they're fascist, it degrades those 6 million people that are in that book. And it's wrong.
It's funny. She hasn't said a word about it, by the way, right? So we're now 48 hours out from that Face the Nation interview with Marco Rubio, where she lied about the Holocaust. And she hasn't said one thing.
Yeah. And, I'm not big on firing people, but a very firm, heartfelt public apology for degrading the sacrifice of the 6 million people that were killed in the Holocaust due to Nazism, to National Socialism. That would be a good start. But that
I said this yesterday. She didn't just come up with this out of nowhere. She prepared that question. She had thought about that question. So it wasn't like a spur of the moment utterance that you could say, I fumbled it. Like, I have experience in this. Right. And she literally, probably the day before, gamed out, how am I going to get Marco Rubio? Because that's what she does. And so that's what's inexcusable about this, is that it's one thing to fumble something and to say, wow, I misstated something. This was a premeditated attempt to use the Holocaust to advance a political agenda.
Correct. And it also was a fantastic example of why the Department of Education should no longer exist.
Oh, wow.
Think about it.
I know.
If you are so, and I don't like using these words stuff. If you're so stupid that you think that free speech led to the Holocaust, every single nickel you ever spent on education should be refunded to you, because that is just absurd. Just the basic premise is absurd. So then you realize she is not that stupid. She isn't. So she used that, as you said, she used the slaughter of 6 million Jews and gypsies and homosexuals and the other big group were Jehovah's Witnesses that were targeted by Nazis to be murdered. She used those corpses to try to make a political point because she hates Donald Trump.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. That is a mental illness.
Yeah. Well, and the sad part is, because she's on the left, the American media gave her a pass. No one has said a word about it in the media. None of her colleagues, no one at the network leadership. I do want to move on though, because there's, we could go on about how bad the media is and how bad Margaret Brennan is. But I only have, a few hours. The thing that I found fascinating also about JD Vance's comments beyond the free speech, which I agree with, like these guys love to talk about democracy and lecture us. But then scuttle any real discussion that they find offensive. Right. So, but there's also the piece of NATO and the military, which is, you mentioned World War II and us coming to their defense to ensure and preserve democracy in Europe. And since that time, they have made certain agreements with us, mainly NATO, to protect them. And the deal was, hey, we'll all have each other's backs, but we'll agree to spend 2% in our national defense. And it wasn't until Donald Trump came in office the first time where he said, this is insane. We are spending all this money as the United States for national defense. And then you guys are shirking your own national defense and spending money on whatever else you spend it on, roads and bridges and whatever else for your own people, because we'll have your back. And it's about time that you lived up to your commitments. I know some in the media find that offensive, but to me, this is what is sometimes called tough love with a family member or friend, which is, guys, you're taking advantage of us. This isn't fair.
Correct.
And I feel like it had to be said.
Yes, Sean, listen, I went over to Belgium and Luxembourg to honor our soldiers that fought in the Battle of the Bulge. And we had these very frank conversations with them, like in their parliaments. And I said, hey, look, man, I represent a very rural district in the state of Wisconsin. And by the way, it's the most beautiful place on the entire planet. Wisconsin's their congressional district, obviously.
I love being freezing.
Oh, it's fantastic. I hate the desert. You can keep it. So I said, look, my people back home, and I represent more people than the entire country of Luxembourg, by the way. I said, my people back home are having difficulty filling up a gas tank and a grocery cart on the same day. And they're asking me, why are we sending hundreds of millions of dollars to a country we'd never heard of until now, essentially? Everyone was saying chicken Kiev. Apparently it's chicken Kyiv. I mean, who knew? And so we're not asking you to do something that you can't do. We're asking you to do something that you don't want to do. And also I said, look, man, could you imagine the security posture of Europe if everybody in NATO who agreed a decade ago did what they said they were going to do? They promised they were going to pay 2% GDP. If everyone had done that a decade ago, would Vladimir Putin have invaded Ukraine to begin with? And that's a very honest question.
It is, because part of this is, if they can't defend them, like, all we're saying is help yourself. You will be stronger. The world will be safer. And now this guy, I probably won't pronounce his name wrong, but Rutte, Rutte, he's the new head of the EU. He actually said that NATO should up it to 3%. I mean, it's like, I think they finally are realizing, hey, if we actually want to talk the game on protecting each other, maybe we should live up to our obligations and look at our own national defense budgets.
Yes. And you know what 10 of them got together, sat around that round table, had apparently a very luxurious dinner, and said, we're going to take a more active involvement in our own collective defense. I applaud that.
I do too.
But
you mentioned Ukraine.
Sean, Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Right.
So now these cats are like, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to participate in our collective defense more. We're now in the verify portion, because sitting around having a fancy dinner, you get heartburn and maybe a hangover if you have too much wine. You don't get Vladimir Putin's ass out of Ukraine. So we need to make sure that they follow through with that, and we should help them if they need. Like, one of the biggest concerns that some of our allies have is that they're not really sure how to spend their money, because they want to build up their own industrial bases inside their own country, like we have. I'm like, that's great. So let us help you build a factory. That's fine. But until the factory's built, the war is still being fought. So you're going to have to, dual hat here for a little bit. You want to build up the military industrial complex in France? fantastic. I have a very
Yeah,
strong one.
but why should we go into debt and run a deficit of $2 trillion while they invest in themselves? It's insane. And you brought up Ukraine. I know that there's all this whining about them not at the table. Look, Putin, you tell me what you think, but I look at this very simply. Putin respects and fears Donald Trump. He doesn't respect any of these other European leaders. And frankly, they haven't earned the right to sit at the big boys table when it comes to paying. And so I know that they all want to talk about that it's not fair that they're not sitting there when it comes to Ukraine and rebuilding, but they haven't earned the right yet. And I think at the end of the day, my goal is I'm less concerned with who's sitting at the table and the outcome. And right now, Donald Trump and his team and Putin and his team can actually resolve this situation and stop the killing.
Well, so Sean, I'm going to very, very strongly disagree with your previous statement.
Okay.
The Ukrainian folks have been fighting tooth and nail for their national survival. So they have earned the right to be just about anywhere they'd like to. However, we know the more people you have in a room, especially when you do have the interpersonal dynamics that you described, which I think are correct, the less likely you're going to have a productive outcome.
Fair. Okay. Fair. Yeah. And you're right. You're right.
You know what I'm talking about? So
no. And I don't mean to impugn the Ukrainians. What I was saying is these European leaders who all said that they had a right. I get, but the bottom line is that if Zelensky could have solved this problem with Putin, he would have. He needs Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's saying, hey, I got it. I will go talk to the guy for you, and I'll tell him we're going to end this war, and here's how. Ukraine has to be involved at the end of the day when it comes to a solution. I'm for that. But I guess my point is all these other prime ministers and whatever heads of state over in Europe who think somehow that they get a right to sit at the negotiating table. No.
Correct. Yes. The best way to start a negotiation is with two people. And then you come up with, kind of a framework, and then you get two more people, and so on, until it actually gets through. I mean, what would the ratification process be? What would the process be for verifying things? All those details have to get worked out. But right now, you need to have a negotiating team like frickin' Mike Waltz going over there, and Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth, and these cats that are like, they're actual players.
Right.
And they know, the Russians know that Donald Trump will open up the gates of hell on them if they don't stop this. And to me, it's shocking. The left has become this party of warmongers, and they seem to be so angry that President Trump wants to just have people stop killing each other. Right. I mean, to me, that is a liberal value that we should embrace.
He was so proud of the fact that there wasn't any wars or incursions during his 4 years in office. I think that's all he wants. Congressman, I want to ask you one other question, because as I mentioned, you spent decades as a Navy SEAL. Yeah. There's all this discussion about, well, what's going to happen when Elon goes to the Department of Defense? How much waste is there from your perspective there?
Massive.
Yeah.
The fraud, waste, and abuse at the Department of Defense, I can't even visualize it. And here's what we want to get to. We want to increase the lethality of our troops and the readiness of our troops so that we can protect American citizens and our allies and our interests. That's all we want to do. At the Veterans Affairs Administration, Sean, I've identified billions of dollars of garbage in these programs that don't work, or they're just throwing money into a fireplace. And I'm so excited, dude, that Doug Collins is coming in, because we need to do the same thing. Because every single dollar that is fraudulently spent at the Department of Defense is not a dollar that can be applied to putting a warhead on a forehead, right? Then every dollar that is fraudulently spent at the Veterans Affairs Administration is a dollar that cannot go to educating a veteran, cannot go to a veteran's healthcare, cannot go to supporting our Gold Star families. And that's wrong. And the left is going to play it like this. Oh, look at these guys. They want to cut veterans' benefits. I'm like, look, I get all my healthcare through the VA, and I love the VA. I think it's a fantastic institution. But the higher you get up, away from the people that treat me in La Crosse, Wisconsin, or Tomah, Wisconsin, the higher you get up, the thinner the areas. And you can sure tell, because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And accountability needs to be brought back to the Veterans Affairs Committee the Veterans Affairs Administration, and also the Department of Defense. Why do you think all of these people are griping so loud? Because there's been this gravy train pouring out of the Pentagon for decades now. And that does not help Americans' national security. It does not help our allies. It does not help the world in general remaining a peaceful place. And that's all we want. I'm sick and tired of war, dude. I spent my entire adult life essentially in combat or training for combat as a Navy SEAL. And I don't want to send America's sons and daughters to go fight a war that we get involved with because we can't deter it to begin with because we're buying $7,000 toilet seats. That math does not math for me, Sean.
No. And I am blown away by the number of people on the left and in the media that somehow are not offended by what Elon Musk and DOGE is uncovering. And frankly, I think that's funny. They all keep saying, well, when he gets to the Department of Defense, what are they going to say? And they're going to say exactly what Derrick Van Orden said, which is bring it on, because the less we're spending on our national defense and more waste, it's not what we want. I want to uncover waste. I want to get rid of inefficiencies. I think your words are exactly right. Congressman, I appreciate you taking the time from Israel to join us, to update us on everything that's happening. And I appreciate you representing us over there, not just the folks in freezing cold Wisconsin, but coming over and showing Israel what great people we are. You're an amazing ambassador on that front. Thank you.
You're sure welcome, Sean. God bless you and your families and all your listeners.
All right, guys, what a great conversation with Congressman Van Orden. A great week headed your way, including a conversation with former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich. You remember, he was sentenced to jail. He was commuted. His sentence was by Donald Trump the first term, and he just pardoned him. An unbelievable story of redemption and a relationship with Donald Trump that extends back to his time on The Apprentice. So I'm going to talk with him later in the week. We've got a great panel coming your way, plus all the updates on the Trump administration. Thanks for tuning in to us. A great column today that I've written at SeanSpicer.com. It comes out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for the free newsletter. I always appreciate a VIP, by the way. So I'll see you then. Go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.